Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're back here on Monday. We're going to get more insights from that first preseason game. Now that I've looked at the film, we'll talk about why I think there's good signs from the offensive line, Payton Wilson, and QB depth. We'll also get you ready as training camp resumes. All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, bringing you your daily dose of all things here on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. More on them later. All right, Steelers fans, we've had a couple days here to kind of go over things. I got a chance to go back and look at the film. I am if you're listening to this or watching this on Monday morning, I'm either on my way back to Latrobe or I'm in Latrobe already, getting ready to cover the last few days of training camp. So we'll go over all of that as we continue to cover training camp, the practices, who's healthy, what they're working on next. So stay tuned for that. I'll also have my daily updates from training camp. But today, I want to go over more of the notes that I took from watching the Steelers preseason opener. Had more time to go over the film. Now that I've had the time to look closer at it, we can get a better idea of where things of what some of the things that we got a chance to see with that first game. As I've said all offseason, the priority for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the biggest part of this year's team that must come together, is the offensive line. They don't have to be elite, but they have to start to coalesce. So I looked really hard at that group. And for the most part, I thought the group took a good first step together. Like I said, I still think they need to bring a little bit more of the nasty. They need to get a little bit more mean. But I think that this first step of them in this game was all about kind of coming together, making sure they're in the right spots. And I think for the most part, they did that. The starting unit allowed just one sack, and it was a covered sack. Mason Rudolph kind of held on to the ball for too long, and I wouldn't really put on the offensive line. And each time the Steelers dropped back to pass with their starting O-line, minus Isaac Seumalo, they had a hat on a hat across the board. And when I say hat on a hat, means basically like everybody that was coming after the quarterback was accounted for. Someone someone was blocking them. But that means, hey, they're communicating, they're on the same page, they're not confused, and they're accountable for all their rushers. Those are all good signs, especially on the first preseason game, that they're able to do those types of things. Now, again, it doesn't mean everything's fixed, doesn't mean everything's going to be great, but it's at least a good first step. And that's where I think the Steelers offensive line can get credit. And that's especially also, and I have to say, especially the case for Broderick Jones. Now, I wrote about this for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It's a film study where I looked at some specific plays that can show what Broderick Jones did well in this game. And hopefully it's published by the time you're listening to this or watching this. Go to post-gazette.com and click on the Steelers page there. And hopefully it's up by then for you to read. If not, I'll let y'all know when it does go up. But as I was looking at the film, I'll note Broderick Jones didn't do anything spectacular. He didn't blow anybody up. There were no super pancakes or anything. But he just did his job. And that right there is exactly the entire point of what they're looking for when it comes to Broderick Jones. Now, because that's all the Steelers really need from him right now. They don't need him to be a superstar yet. He's still the youngest player on the offensive line, despite being the one drafted the oldest, drafted the earliest. But he's still the youngest player on the offensive line. He's still a guy that's figuring things out. That was his first start in the preseason at a left tackle position. So, there's point for that there. But I think that the thing is that you have to compare it to when you look at how he played in the last few years at right tackle. This is a big difference because so many times he hasn't looked like a coordinated offensive tackle. He's missed simple blocks. His footwork has been sloppy at times. His hand plates would be non-existent. He'd just be letting guys get their hands on him first. And sometimes he'd even do the completely wrong assignment. You saw plays where he'd be pulling, and it was obvious he wasn't supposed to be pulling in a certain situation. He had some rough moments. Now, again, not everything was bad with him last year. I was one of the main people saying that, like, hey, I think he has some ups, some downs, but he needs to improve. But give him time. He will improve. And he still had good moments, but he led the team with QB pressures, and he had enough pressures to have the seventh most allowed in the NFL of all offensive tackles. Not a good look. But that's not what you want from your 14th overall pick. You want to be able to build with them moving forward. But to start this year, you wanted to see him get the basics while he's at left tackle. And there were some people like seeing clips from training camp when there weren't any pads on saying, oh no, it's looking really bad. And there were times that, look, he got whooped by Alex Highsmith, sure. But as I was noting all last week leading up to this game, I thought he was looking better. I thought he was doing a little bit more. I thought he was being a little bit more detailed in his work. He was winning a bit more. And I think you saw more of that in this game. And that's where I show in my film study that you can read with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I thought he got off the ball quick out of his stance, which is a big reason why he lost. I think he lost like 20 pounds in weight, as he explained to us in minicamp. He was quick to get to his spot. There was a lot of times he had to kind of get out because he had a rusher lined up a few gaps away from him. And he was getting to that spot to be in the right position to engage them. He used his hands properly. He would engage with them. He kind of uses, because he has this really long arm, so he has to be able to use those to jab to kind of establish leverage. And I thought he did a lot of those good things. Good news. Broderick Jones did all those things Saturday, and that's a good sign. Now, doesn't mean that he's fixed, doesn't mean he's about to be a superstar, all-pro offensive tackle, but at least he showed in an outing for 2 drives he could do the basics, and that's what the Steelers have been looking for him. Now, he lined up a lot against Josh Hines Allen, excuse me. If you don't know who Josh Hines Allen is, he was once Josh Allen, because the other Josh Allen was more prominent. They threw in the Hines Allen, but But Josh Hines Allen, the Jaguars, Josh Hines Allen, he's a former first-round pick, a former 7th overall pick by the Jaguars back in 2019. So this guy comes with 6 years of NFL experience. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler. He's a pretty good edge rusher. He's not like in the T.J. Watt, Myles Garrett range, but he is like a respected guy who's a good veteran in the NFL. And Jones held his ground against him. And I think that's a good sign. He quickly got to his spots, even when Hines Allen was lined up a little wider outside. So it was a little bit of a challenge for him to get there. But I was really impressed by how he was able to use his feet to kind of get in the right spots, because for Broderick Jones, a big reason why he was such a high pick was his pedigree, was his athleticism, and he needed to combine that athleticism with good technique. And it was going to take time to do that, but he did that a little bit in this game. Again, he didn't dominate, but he also didn't make mistakes, and that's the good sign. For offensive linemen, oftentimes their best games are the games you don't even think about them. And if you didn't think about Broderick Jones that much in this game, unless you were staring at him for a while, the way I was when I was rewatching it, that's a good thing, because you didn't really notice him because he didn't make any mistakes. And I think the offensive line as a whole also didn't make many mistakes. Now, there were some mistakes out there. Trey Fautanu had a penalty, but all in all, the unit got the basics down. They picked up blitzes, and I thought that they got to their details pretty solidly, and they looked like a functioning unit that was able to protect Mason Rudolph, and I think that led to that successful drive early on, and that's a really good sign. And that's fine for now. It's not the finished product. They still have a long ways to go before I think that they are the unit that you even want them to become this year. But it takes time to grow. And we've talked about that a lot on the show. It's going to take time. But the Saturday performance, that's a good first step from Broderick Jones, from the offensive line as a whole. But again, like Broderick Jones doing the basics, that's the first step. Because like in this game, there's a couple. In fact, I think if you go back and you look at, I think it was the Roman Wilson 19-yard pass, the first play that this offense had. He kind of gets his feet out. He gets his feet to fire off the ball. He keeps his feet underneath him so that he has a good base. And so when Josh Hines Allen engages him, he's able to use his hands, come from a place of strength, engage, and he doesn't lose any leverage. And the same thing, I think, for the Darnell Washington touchdown. And there were a few other plays as well where you could just see, like, hey, he's moving, but he's not moving in a way that kind of compromises his position. And I think that's something that Broderick Jones was doing. And also, he was moving to the right spots in the run game. I know the run game didn't really blow up, but when I was looking back at it, Broderick Jones seemed like he was putting his hat right on the right guys. So I think he deserves some points for that, as far as just like, counting, putting my notes, when you put your notebook together and you're accounting who's having good days and who's having bad days. I think you could say he stacked a few good days now for the Steelers and Steelers camp, and then in his preseason game. So that's good for now. You still got to see more growth from this unit, but that's just an observation I have. Again, go check out my film study if you want to see the plays for yourself, or go watch it. Again, NFL Plus is available to anyone. If you go to NFL.com, you can sign up and watch it yourself. But I'm always happy to go over those types of things. I love going over the minutia and the details to see what players are or aren't doing right that they have to work on, or that they have shown that they've worked on. And Broderick Jones, if he takes some steps forward this year, that'll go a long ways to fixing the Steelers roster and setting up this team to be a really competitive one down the stretch. We'll monitor the continued improvements there as they continue throughout training camp. But we got to take a quick break. Next up, we're going to talk about Payton Wilson, because I thought he looked really good in this preseason game, even more so when I got back to watch the film. We'll talk about that next year on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. Be right back. But first, I want to remind you, this show is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year because NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with fantasy football experience like never before. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and Locked On Steelers listeners are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years, and the updates that they're rolling out with this month are wild in the best way. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over the over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where each week the lowest scoring team gets eliminated until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. Or if you're into the classics, you can still play to the head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's make this fantasy season the best one yet by going to Yahoo Fantasy. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue this episode here. More notes from watching the Steelers preseason opener. I feel like in my post-game review, I did not talk about, because I did a bonus episode. If you missed that, go back and check it out. It was my more raw reaction to the game and how smooth I felt the process was. But I feel like I didn't talk enough about Payton Wilson. I did mention him, but I thought he had a really good game. And again, it was very small sample size, but in that small sample size, I was impressed. And he looked like he was fit naturally into the role of being the team's top inside linebacker, excuse me. Now, this is not to say that he's ready to replace Patrick Queen, but I do think he's showing a commitment to his game that could turn out to be a great asset for the Steelers, both this year and for the long term, because he's doing some interesting things here. He's shown that he's a heady player and he's also a really good athlete. That could be a dangerous combination. Now, as we've talked about, Wilson took over the green dot for this game with Patrick Queen out. So he was calling out the defense. For those who don't know, the green dot is basically the helmet where you're getting the defensive calls into the radio from the defensive coaches. You're relaying what's being said. And so there's a lot of responsibility with that. You got to be able to communicate, talk, not one, listen, understand, but also talk and be able to relate things to guys, and also understand what adjustments come with that. So, green dot responsibilities fell on Payton Wilson. It's not a huge deal because I think a lot of guys that, get to this level of the NFL, they can do the green dot, but when you can do it efficiently, it is a plus. Now, I thought that was really good. I thought there were good signs of Payton Wilson using the green dot, because every time he was out there, the defense didn't look out of sorts. They were either right up on the play or they were just a step behind because they just got beat in one-on-one. But I didn't see miscommunications. I didn't see guys just leaving dudes wide open where they looked clueless about where they were. And I thought that was pretty solid. And then, I thought he also played really well on top of the green dot. I thought the first run of the game, he shot a B gap, brought down ATN for just a 3-yard gain. And that showed his ability to fly into the hole. And that's something that I've seen him do a lot in training camp. He has looked good doing that. He's playing downhill. He's attacking. And that's not something we saw a lot of last season. That particular stop was interesting to me. And I kept slowing it down and going back because I was wondering how he got there, because the the Jaguars offensive line tried to double team on his side of the play, and I thought he was going to get chipped into. They also pulled a lineman from the opposite side of the formation. So between the double team and the pulling lineman, I thought somebody should have got him. And so I was like, how did he get through there? And it wasn't just a him thing. It was a good team effort there. One, Keanu Benton held up that double team. They eventually did chip off of him, but they couldn't get to Payton Wilson, and I thought that was a good sign. Then two, Wilson reads the pulling offensive lineman from the other formation and beats him to the spot, so effectively he's able to kind of cancel out the pulling lineman. But even when the pulling lineman got there, the other guy that was also there was Chuck Clark. The safety came down to help. And the lineman ended up blocking him instead of Wilson. So it was Wilson and ATN in the hole. He made a good tackle. And I thought that was a really good, just a run stuff, a good play right there. And you can kind of even tell if Wilson can play a downhill style like that and attack and make those tackles in space for most of the season, his speed, his explosiveness, and his size will all be problems for opponents if he's in their backfield. And that's something that I think that he's excited to prove this year, because there's been this notion that, he can't take on guys. He's not that physical of a backer. And then I was kind of like, I think when people used to say, I was like, I don't know, man, like, let's give him some time to adjust to the NFL. I think that he can be that guy. Just watching his tape, I think that's something that he can, with his size and his athleticism and his long arms, I think that's something that he absolutely can do. But, you can also see Payton Wilson's got some swagger to him, and I think that's a really good thing that could be something in the Steelers' favor. It's something that, I really didn't see last year when I was watching him during his rookie season. If you think back to training camp, there was the first, I think it was the first or second backs on backers, where I noted he went up against Kenneth Gainwell in 3 straight reps. At the end of the third rep, when he beat Kenneth Gainwell, he kind of showed some some trash talking, telling Gainwell to get back into his line, kind of pointing him for there. And I was like, oh, okay, some smack talk from Payton Wilson. And I think you're seeing some confidence, but also some like, hey, we're gonna talk our talk, some kind of, I'm gonna be that villain on defense. And we saw a little bit more of that in this game with the 4th down play where the Jaguars did convert, but you see Payton Wilson lift up the guy and slam him to the turf. And I thought that was his way of trying to send a message. He was also talking to the guy afterwards, because the guy was talking too. And I think it's good to have guys that are ready to be mean and ready to kind of have that edge for the defense and have more demons like that on the field. I think Steelers fans are going to appreciate the meanness to this defense, not just Payton Wilson, but to a lot of players on this defense, because I think that they kind of showing the spirit that they want to embody all throughout training camp, and it's going to really come out during the season as the year goes on. I already did an episode maybe a week and a half ago, a couple Fridays back, where I expressed I think Jalen Ramsey is in the position to be the ultimate villain in the NFL. Just the way he talks, the way he walks, the way he attacks, the way he plays, the way he flies around. I think he has the swagger and the talent still to be the villain that everyone hates if you're not on his team. But if you're on his team, you root for his team, you absolutely love him. And I think that he can really help the defense embody that as well across the board. So throw in Wilson and him wanting to be like this. I think Derek Harmon's got a mean streak. We know TJ Watt, Cam Hayward got something like that. Joey Porter jaws at players a lot too. I think you could have an entire unit of just like really mean dudes and bring that edge to the Steelers defense, making them all sort of villains. And I think that's something that Steelers fans would really like to see, especially if it comes with them being coordinated and good. Like, even Juan Thornhill, the hit that he had in this game was like a good, like, set the tone type of hit, because it was, it wasn't a high hit. It was straight shoulder pad to chest, break the pass up type of play. That kind of stuff, if the defense is bringing it, it's going to bring an edge. It's going to bring an excitement. It's going to bring a confidence. And I think those are all things the Steelers defense could really use throughout the year. And if the Steelers could capture that, I wouldn't be shocked if they're healthy and they make it through the year and they're playing like this mean unit. I wouldn't be shocked to see them as a top 3 unit by the end of the season. You still got to show more and do more. I'm not saying that, they're just a lock to be a top 3 unit or anything like that. But I do think that they are showing more and more like how deep, how well balanced this defense is when it comes to talent. There's excitement on the D line. There's excitement at inside linebacker, excitement at outside linebacker, excitement at corner. I'll say there's not excitement at safety. Minka Fitzpatrick's gone, but I will say that Juan Thornhill acquitted himself well, as did Chuck Clark in this preseason game. So you're at least not terrified or that concerned about safety. Maybe you are concerned a little bit about safety, but I think that they've kind of acquitted themselves well in this preseason game and in training camp. And I think it just fits in with the defense. And it's going to be interesting to see just how good they can be. Granted, Juan Thornhill did say that they could be one of the greatest of all time. And I was just like, buddy, let's not go there. Let's not go there. There's way too many great Steelers defenses, let alone NFL defenses, to compare them to. Just be the best defense right now. I think that's a good goal for them to have. And I do think it's actually an attainable goal when you look at this roster and all the guys that are on it, both young and old. So they still got to do a lot more than just talk. They still got to do. They still got to go out there and they still got to play the games. But I think that they're doing some good things here in the Steelers defense. And Payton Wilson, absolutely a big part of that picture. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, I'm going to go over the quarterback situation because we saw good showings from both the backups who played while Will Howard was hurt. So what does that mean? We'll talk about that next year on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, remind you, this show is also brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute that you need to head to a ball game or with friends or family? Maybe it's game day, but you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come out with you. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster than easier than ever before as well. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal? Gametime's zone deals give the best seats in your section for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're going to continue talking about some observations, but I wanted to take some time to talk about the backup quarterback situations. I haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about that this training camp, especially because both backups looked really good Saturday. I thought that they did a good job. Now, I do think Mason Rudolph showed exactly why they brought him back. He looks like, the top backup without any question. 9 of 10, moves him down the field. His drive was solid, saw the field, executed, keeps it simple. That's why they liked him. That's why they brought him back. And there's no doubt to me that he's the number 2 in this offense, and that the Steelers should feel like they're in good hands if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt on a short-term basis and that Rudolph needs to fill in for a game or two. Heck, he won 3 games in a row for them to get them to the playoffs back in 2023. So not at all out of the ordinary. But I was impressed by Skylar Thompson. And again, it's just preseason. 3 touchdowns and 233 yards, 20-28 in preseason. Not a big deal. Not something to hang your hat on. But at least that they're moving the ball, right? How many times, if you think back to when you watched Landry Jones or some of the really rough preseason outings when just there would be no ball movement, the offense would just sputter at all times. You didn't see that. It was a very coordinated offense that looked like it was comfortable doing all the things it needed to do. I thought that was a good sign. So both Rudolph and Thompson, they looked good in this game. But heck, they both started in a playoff game, at least one. And then funny enough, I think they both started against the Bills and lost. So they're no stranger to playing real playing time, and that helps it look easier when it's in preseason because defenses are being very bland and they're just trying to get out the basics, and they did a good job. But what's nice to see is if players can get their basics down and execute on a basic level in preseason, and that's something that these guys have done a lot in their careers. So kudos to them. Now, I've said a lot about these guys, and I know there's probably some people saying, okay, but what about Will Howard? And of course, Will Howard can't play right now. He has a broken bone in his hand. I believe it's right below his pinky. That's something broken. So initially the report was that he would miss all of preseason, but Mike Tomlin left it out there that maybe he'd be able to come back by the 3rd game. I think it would be great for him if he did, because I have been excited to see what he would look like in a game situation, because he's been practicing very well, getting the ball around, looking like a professional at a young age. I think think that he's been good, and I think Will Howard will be fine. I think he should be back, but if he isn't, he was having a good camp. It's not like the Steelers don't like him. He delivered the ball on time, looked poised, did the basics. And these are things the Steelers want to have in their room, and they also want to have a young QB that they're developing that to keep in the fold for the future. So for people who are probably sitting there saying, "Oh no, like this could be really rough for Will Howard, like he might not make the team," I think he's pretty safe. I think that they're going to try to keep him around as the young guy who learns over time. Again, Tomlin did say he might come back in the third game. If he does come back in the third game, that's going to be really interesting to see. But even if he doesn't, again, I wouldn't be shocked if he's still on this roster. There's always a chance that if an injury lasts too long, that he might end up being put on IR anyways. I just think back to Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson with their rookie years. If they feel like, hey, there's no way he's going to be able to get up to speed real fast, so let's just put him on injured reserve and move on. We'll keep Thompson, we'll keep Rudolph, and we'll revisit this next year. But I like the idea of keeping Will Howard in the mix here, because in the long run, I see Will Howard as a potential competition candidate for the Steelers' next eventual big QB move, which I think they'll be trading up in the first round to go get a guy. And I think Will Howard's someone to have a good standard for the young QB to kind of look up to if he's going to come in with experience. And that'll probably mean, it'll still probably mean keeping Mason Rudolph with it, but keep Mason Rudolph, keep Will Howard, and then draft your 2026 quarterback, and that could be your QB room. And again, that's not to oust Skylar Thompson, but I think you kind of get the picture here with Mason Rudolph, and I think that's a good situation to be in if you're the Steelers, if you have that quarterback room for the future. Again, assuming Aaron Rodgers is done after this season, and that's just going to be that. But Will Howard, I know that some people are like, man, this is a bummer, and it is a bummer. I was looking forward to covering it, but I think Will Howard's day will come when he gets an opportunity to run an offense. It's gonna be there, and I think that he's got some potential to him, and I'm excited to see him when he gets back out there and being healthy. But again, I think this still ultimately comes down to the Steelers' ultimate plan of going and getting their quarterback next year in the NFL draft, and I think that if they see that they can have a good quarterback room around him to help as an asset, they'll make that a priority in that process. And I'm sure you won't have to worry about Will Howard going anywhere, because I think that Will Howard adds to the quarterback room. He's an athlete. He's bigger. He can move. So I think that he could be a good fit there for that. So I know I'd make a lot of jokes about Will Howard because the Will Howard camp is pretty crazy, but I do think he was looking good in camp. I'd be intrigued to see if he could make it back before the end of preseason. But those are all things we'll have to see moving forward there. But again, don't expect Will Howard to be cut. I think that he will survive that. They'll keep him around, and we'll see where that goes. But camp resumes today. If you're watching this or listening to this in the morning, I'm probably on my way there, or I'm already at St. Vincent College in Latrobe setting up there. Thanks again for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, same handle everywhere. It's at Carter Critiques. You can find me posting there on several different platforms, my daily updates from training camp, as well as on this YouTube channel. Thanks again for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, including that article I told you about Broderick Jones. I think hopefully it should be up by the morning. We'll see what happens there. But you can also find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those episodes. Back here tomorrow as I'm back in Latrobe, getting you another insight on another day of camp here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.